Greetings travelers, I'm Gav. Welcome to another Last Epoch lore video. Today we'll be taking a look at the Chronowyrm. A Chronowyrm is a dragon-like creature that can be found floating around the end of time. In this video we'll explore the lore and discuss what is known of these worms. I'll go over the life cycle of the Chronowyrm and discuss the different known variants. At the end I have some spooky audio to share with you. And we'll discuss the gigantic Chronowyrm floating in the distance of the end of time skybox. Let's get into it. Warning: this video contains footage from Last Epoch and delves into lore discussions and story elements. If you'd prefer to watch Atera's mysteries firsthand without spoilers, you might want to watch this video later. I hope to foster a community of lore enthusiasts and host healthy discussions, theorizing about the game's lore and narrative. Now, back to the video. The Chronowyrms are cosmetic player pets that were offered to Kickstarter backers back in 2018. These are the notes and observations of Elder Pannion on these creatures. His notes read, "Beyond the world we knew, and outside the flow of time is the place we find ourselves now. A place where the detritus of reality drifts together, a graveyard of dead timelines. Here, there be dragons. The sanctuary we have found here in the ruins of our old home, suspended over an infinite abyss, has gained visitors. Small dragon hatchlings that the other visitors and travelers have come to call Chronowyrms. They float around the ruins, endlessly curious about the new visitors to this remote place. Though the vast shadows cutting through the dark below and the sound of distant roars has me worried about how large these things can grow. Most of the people stranded here are delighted by the visits of these hatchlings, some even taking them as pets and adorning them with gold or even armor. Even they know to stay away from the Chronowyrms that crackle with sparks and glow with arcane power. Some of the remaining elders theorize that these Chronowyrms have been feeding on the distant storms that can be seen far off in the distance, often surrounding dense clusters of crystal. They have also noticed that as the lightning around these hatchlings grows more volatile, crystals have begun to form on their scales, to the point of completely covering these thusly dubbed crystal Chronowyrms. One only has to gaze out into the abyss and catch a glance at one of these clusters of crystal that have shattered, to be reminded of a hatched egg, and recall the titanic shadows that swim in the darkness below. A little background on Elder Pannion. We meet Pannion in the Ruined Era, an elder of the Council of Last Refuge. We'll look further into the Keepers and Elders in future videos, but essentially the Elders were established by Keeper Balthus on his arrival in the Ruined Era. That's at least my assumption based on the fact that the notes of the first Elder are written by Keeper Balthus, but I could be wrong here.
I once believed the shards would be safe, where the gods could not reach. In the future, I was mistaken. I find myself in a ruined era.
Balthus' only goal when arriving in the Ruined Era was to keep the last remaining shard that he had of the Epoch safe and hidden. He found other survivors and brought them underground into the Keeper tunnels for safety and shelter from the void. Last Refuge is one of the final remaining human civilizations left in this Ruined Era. Elder Pannion in his notes seems to obviously be talking about the end of time zone, but that's what confuses me a little bit. I'm not sure if or how he could have visited the end of time, it's never really referenced. However, Elder Gaspar does speak to Elder Pannion's expert ability to use the Epoch.
Elder Pannion is an expert at using the shard. He can weaponize it against the void.
The thing that doesn't make sense though is that in this Ruined Era, they've only ever had the one shard of the Epoch that Balthus brought with him.
With only one shard left by my side, my purpose is clear. I must seek refuge, prevent others from this power, and locate the rest of the Epoch.
The other shard wound up with us even further in the future of the Ruined Era. We arrived years in the future after Balthus did, seemingly. He had already established Last Refuge and the Elders and preserved the knowledge of Atera in these tunnels in the last archive. We come in after all of that. Also, another fact is that it apparently takes multiple shards in order for the time rifts to be opened. So, how did Pannion witness the end of time, let alone write about it and also return here to the Ruined Era? Is Pannion also a traveler, or were they at some point? Or perhaps they were able to witness other timelines somehow through his study and knowledge of the shard. I'm not sure yet. In any event, he was able to witness the end of time in the Chronowyrm hatchlings that curiously floated around those that are stranded there. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. In this section, we will explore the life cycle and different variants of Chronowyrms that have been discovered so far. There's the regular Chronowyrm, who's seemingly the hatchling or baby among them. These little guys float freely around the end of time and are very curious creatures. Followed up by the gilded Chronowyrm, which have been adopted as pets and adorned with gold by their owners. The armored Chronowyrm are similar to the gilded and are pets of travelers. They are outfitted with tiny armor, just as Pannion described. The lightning Chronowyrm feeds off of the distant storms in the end of time, and crackles with volatile arcane energy. Crystal Chronowyrms were once lightning Chronowyrms. The crystal variant is the result of the volatile arcane magic crystallizing on their scales. The next stage of development of a Chronowyrm is the adolescent stage. As the hatchling matures into adolescence, the Chronowyrms start to look much more dragon-like in the face and snout. Their arms and legs begin to protrude further from their bodies. The final adult stage of the Chronowyrm sees its back scales become much more pronounced. Its entire body becomes more serpent and dragon-like, including its elongated snout and sharp teeth. Its arms and legs are now much more pronounced and defined as well. But what about the gigantic Chronowyrm circling the end of time? Elder Pannion mentioned the distant roars echoing beneath them in the end of time. So I went there, and I maxed out the environmental sound, basically muting all the other volume and just having that maxed out. And this is what I heard. Pretty creepy, right? What start out as hatchlings seem to grow into these massive creatures. We're not sure exactly what their food source is, as it seems to be only speculated in Pannion's notes. And I don't know if that only applies to the lightning Chronowyrms or if all of them feed off of the distant storms. We also don't know how many there are, or if their curiosity will ever turn to hostility. I don't personally think that they would do us harm, as they could have so easily already. The Chronowyrm seems to be a passive, yet massive creature. The nightmarish thing to think about is this. What else is out there in the darkness? I can't thank you enough for watching through to the end and exploring the Chronowyrm with me. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you aren't already for more Last Epoch lore content. I aim to have at least one video out per week. Let me know down in the comments what stories of Eterra you're most interested in hearing next. I'll be working to summarize every chapter of the campaign next, and then doing more deep dives and forming my own theories. Stay tuned for all of that and more. Farewell, travelers.